vessels of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
In Dallas, Texas, 3 shots were fired at President Kennedy's motorcade in downtown Dallas. The first reports say that President Kennedy has been seriously wounded by this shooting.
It is a big idea, a new world order.
It was almost as if it were a planned implosion. It just pancaked.
Either you are with us or you are with the terrorists.
But I also believe that a lot of gun owners would agree that AK-47s belong in the hands of soldiers, not in the hands of criminals.
Guns will be taken. No one will be able to be armed. We're going to take all guns.
For many of the police and guard troops, it is an uncomfortable job to do this in an American city.
Global governance at last. Is it one world? The central bankers in charge. But aren't we all just living and dying for what the central banks do?
As for me, give me liberty or give me death!
The answer to 1984 is 1776.
Welcome to the InfoWars Nightly News. It is Wednesday, September 25th, 2013, and I'm Leanne McAdoo. Here's a look at what's coming up tonight.
Tonight.
Rebellion against oppression conjured up to me the Rebel Alliance fighting against the empire.
The devil you know is always the better the devil you don't know. Ted Cruz's filibuster targets the galactic empire of America and how the UN Arms Treaty lives on. That's next on the InfoWars Nightly News.
You guys are a bunch of play soldiers, and I've had it with you. I declare resistance.
Well, in a rare 100-0 vote, both parties in the Senate voted to forge ahead with a spending bill that would keep the government open, but it would leave the door wide open for Senate Democrats to be able to restore the funding for Obamacare that was eliminated last week. That's right, I said all 100 senators, even Ted Cruz, who stood for an epic 21-hour faux filibuster.
And I will confess that phrase, a rebellion against oppression, conjured up to me the Rebel Alliance fighting against the empire. The empire being the Washington, D.C. establishment. And indeed, immediately on hearing that phrase, I wondered if at some point we were going to see a tall gentleman in a mechanical breathing apparatus come forward and say in a deep voice, "Mike Lee, I am your father." The only path, if we're going to oppose Obamacare, is to stand together and oppose cloture. And I would ask for my friends on the Democratic aisle to listen to this.
The hour of noon having arrived pursuant to the order of the Senate will be.
But, Mr. President, for lack of a better way of describing this, it has been a big waste of time. The government is set to shut down in a matter of hours, just a few days. Government will close.
Oh no, the government is shutting down. However, will we pass stricter gun laws and stick our hands down your pants without the funding? Well, listen, Cruz knew that this little marathon speech was not going to block Obamacare. That wasn't even on the table. He set out to do this 20-something hours ago because he wanted D.C. to listen. Instead, the lapdog mainstream media chose to focus on Cruz's recital of green eggs and ham, or his little rendition of The Empire Strikes Back. And it's not just the liberal media and the Democrats who have turned against Ted Cruz. Also, key members of his party have stabbed him in the back just for doing the right thing.
As soon as we listed Ted Cruz as our featured guest this week, I got unsolicited research and questions, not from Democrats, but from top Republicans who to hammer Cruz. Why are Republicans so angry at Ted Cruz?
Well, because this was a strategy laid out by Mike Lee and Ted Cruz without any consultation with their colleagues.
That is a false justification. The issue is much broader than that, and they know it. They didn't come after Mike Lee or Rand Paul. The Republicans continue to come after Ted Cruz issue after issue because they see him as the real threat. Now, Cruz said that he gave his overnight argument because Obamacare is the #1 job killer in America. It's forcing millions of Americans into part-time work. Their insurance is being threatened. But according to the Ministry of Truth, Obamacare is going to be affordable for millions of Americans. Well, that contradicts this article by Paul Joseph Watson that says Americans complain of soaring Obamacare costs. According to a spokesperson for the Health and Human Services, for millions of Americans, these new options will finally make health insurance work within their budgets. But that just doesn't seem to jive with most Americans who responded to a tweet Paul Joseph Watson put out, and an overwhelming majority of them said that their premiums would be increasing. But hey, Obama just wants you to get a good deal on your health insurance while supplies last.
What you've had is an unprecedented effort, or have been trying to scare and discourage people from getting a good deal. Some of you may have seen some of the commercials out there that are a little wacky.
Very wacky indeed, kind of like your campaign promises to not raise taxes. Let's see what you said. Here's Obama on Obamacare. On Tuesday at the Clinton Global Initiative, President Obama admitted that we did raise taxes on some things. Some things. How about a medical device tax, a high medical bills tax, flexible spending account tax, super savers surtax, Medicare payroll tax increase, the employer mandate tax, tax on health insurers. He's all over the place.
He wants no compromise. He wants what he wants, or he's willing to shut down the government.
And frankly, the devil you know is always better than the devil you don't.
It is abundantly clear that nobody knows if this new healthcare premium is going to test the limits of affordability. Why are we giving away our laws to unelected UN bureaucrats? Coming up after the break, I'm going to be speaking with David Knight about the UN Arms Trade Treaty that John Kerry just signed today. Now, you can catch the Alex Jones Show live at Prison Planet TV. If you're not already a subscriber, please consider becoming a member. You know you can share your password with up to 10 other people. Share the transmission. We'll be right back.
Hitler took the guns. Stalin took the guns. Mao took the guns. Fidel Castro took the guns. Hugo Chavez took the guns. And I'm here to tell you, 1776 will commence again if you try to take our firearms. Doesn't matter how many lemmings you get out there on the street begging for them to have their guns taken. We will not relinquish them. Do you understand? That's why you're going to fail, and the establishment knows no matter how much propaganda, the Republic will rise again when you attempt to take our guns.
David Knight, welcome to the show. So John Kerry just signed the UN Arms Trade Treaty today. So what does that mean for the Second Amendment here in America?
Well, it doesn't mean anything just yet. But what they want to do is they want to register and track all guns. That's really about registering, tracking gun owners. It's not about gun control, it's about people control. And they need to understand that. They need to understand that this is really, as it's put out right now, this is a Trojan horse. They had 99% of the countries voted to ratify it at the UN. It's only going to require 75% to change it. And they do have a passing reference to small arms. It is not about just the transfer of major arms between countries.
Right, exactly. And so then they just need a 2/3 majority here in America. Do you think that's going to happen in Congress?
Right. We've got an article today at INFOWARS, and pointed out, one of the senators pointed out to Obama, since he seems to not want to follow the Constitution or the procedures, he pointed out that the Senate has to ratify it. So after Kerry signed it, that doesn't really mean anything. As far as the Constitution goes, the President has to sign it, then the Senate has to ratify it. And then even if they ratify it, it still doesn't alter the Constitution, but there would be legal challenges that people would have to mount. You know that the government is still going to enforce this, just like they enforce other unconstitutional laws. Even when the courts find against them, they continue to arrest photographers. They continue to enforce the gun control laws in Washington, D.C., even though the Supreme Court threw it out 5 years ago. But the key thing to remember is that when it goes to this next step at the Senate, it's not just 2/3 of the Senate, it's 2/3 of those who are present. And they can play games with that as well. Maybe they'll do something during a recess appointment. Maybe Harry Reid will try to get it through at that point.
Exactly. And Obama was just saying, I think a week ago on Sunday, about, you know, that he was going to be ramping up the efforts for gun control. There's always sort of this strange timing.
Right. I wrote an article about the connections with false flags in this. Of course, the obvious one that everybody understands is the fact that Fast and Furious was obviously targeted towards this. It was laying the groundwork for this. These things don't just come out of nowhere. Like FDR said, there's no coincidences in this. There's no coincidence in the timing, and there's no coincidence that for quite some time, even under the Bush administration, they were transferring arms across the border to Mexico to try to create a public perception that this was a threat to people's safety, when it was really our government that was doing it. That got busted wide open. The New York Times pointed out that it was a manufactured effort. In other words, a false flag. There's no question about that. 1 week before this came up for a vote last July was the Aurora, Colorado shooting. Exactly 1 week. They were trying to get the initiative back. They were trying to scare the public again because the public already, they saw that the emperor had no clothes when it came to Fast and Furious. They still couldn't get any traction on it because the Republicans were using this to score points before the election. So they said, we're going to wait until after the election. We'll do it in the lame duck session. Hours after Obama was reelected, declared the winner in the reelection, they said, we're going to wait and do it in the spring, which they subsequently did. And they had, for 3 months, we heard about the next shooting, which was the Sandy Hook shooting.
Exactly. And now it is kind of like this huge war for the mind, because not only are they going after the Second Amendment, but they're going after the First Amendment as well. Now they're trying to tie in whistleblowers like Edward Snowden and Manning in with the Aaron Alexis and other mass shooters.
But then what's the question? You're a security expert, Mr. Gomez. You tell me, what do we do now? For every Snowden and for every Aaron Alexis who got through and did some damage, how many others are out there? And what's the process now? Do we go back and spend hundreds of millions of dollars more re-vetting all the people who have so far been vetted because we're not sure it was done properly?
And we were telling people who buy it, so many people are very passionate and should be about defending the freedom of speech, about stopping government surveillance, and defending whistleblowers like Edward Snowden, but they attack the Second Amendment. The Guardian is a very good example of that. They've been tireless in defense of free speech and Fourth Amendment protections, but they throw the Second Amendment under the bus. And as we pointed out, these are authoritarians. They're coming after all of these. And as Alex started out the sequence, making the comparisons to Hitler and Mao and Stalin, one of the things that they do after they take the guns, they take the journalists. They line them up against the wall because they don't want people talking about what they're doing. So they always take the journalists. So this is about control. This is total control. And this is them coming after the First and the Second Amendment.
Thank you so much, David Knight. Well, there is no doubt a war on for our minds. I was actually just watching State of Mind, The Psychology of Control again last night. The movie is so good, and it gets into just how far back this plan for total control goes. You can pick that up at the InfoWarsStore.com. For a limited time, it's on sale, actually.
Jakari Jackson here, and I want to talk to you for a second about water. You know about ProPure, our flagship water purification system, but check out some of our portable water filter products at InfoWarsStore.com. The clearly filtered water pitcher. Also, for those of you on the go, we have the Athlete Edition filtered water bottle and the RAD Eliminator Pro filtered sports bottle that removes radiation. And keep in mind, we have replacement filters for all of these products. The ever-popular grab-and-go bag favorite, the Life Straw, the Crystal Quest shower filter system, and the Aquapod kit, great for mass storage of water. And while you're at the InfoWars shop, pick up a copy of our latest book, 31 Days to Survival. You can find all this and more at the InfoWarsStore.com. And don't forget, it's your support that funds our operation. Sign up for our free newsletter at InfoWars.com/newsletter.